Alright guys, welcome to the video today. So in this video we're going to be talking about sniping on a Stormcaller versus sniping on a Voidwalker and kind of why I prefer one of them over the other and what I've noticed about the two from my time playing them. I remember leveling Stormcaller around a month ago and I've been playing with it ever since, kind of messing around. And you know, I've used it in sweats, in pubs and all that, and I've noticed a few things and I wanted to share the pros and cons of each class with you guys in this video. So hope you guys enjoy the video and let's get into it. I know that it's safe to say without a doubt that Stormcaller is widely regarded as the best class right now, and though I do agree it's the best for shotgunning, I'm not quite so sure exactly about sniping and whether it's better. And this is, by the way, this is talking about like a competitive environment, right? Not necessarily pubs or if you're playing Control with your friends. I think it does kind of depend on the game mode, and I think that Stormcaller definitely has the edge for something like 6v6 because of the super. But in 3v3s, I noticed a few things that are good about it and a few things that are bad about it. The first thing is that the whole combo between the nade and the melee is similar to how Firebolt is right now. Arc bolts were nerfed at the very end of year 1, moving into Taken King, so the radius is extremely small on them now, and you'll notice a lot of the times that if you think you got a tag on someone, it'll make the sound, the visual effect will go off, and it'll chain to the person, but for some reason, because of how badly they're nerfed, it doesn't actually do any damage. So I noticed that it's very inconsistent in that regard, and even though you can get off a few defensive, nade melees, like you used to be able to do with Sunsinger, where you know someone is coming around the corner because of the radar, you can kind of throw a grenade on the ground, float up, and then get a melee off, and it's a little bit better than the Sunsinger combo was, I think, as far as like right now, because the Sunsinger melee doesn't have quite as much range as the Thunderstrike, but the whole like defensive nade melee combo is pretty good. The super obviously is fantastic as long as you're using Ionic Blink. You're going to get that super extremely often if you're running the recommended tier 5 intellect, tier 1 discipline, and then tier 5 strength, along with electrostatic mind. Overall, very good class. I just noticed that it's very inconsistent, and there's not like a lot of passive abilities that, although they're they're good, but they don't necessarily benefit the whole passive playstyle. I'm not sure if any of you caught it earlier, but I don't actually run Pulse Wave when I'm sniping. I have broken my past theory of me saying I don't like Second Wind while shotgunning with legendary hand cannons. And if you see me using it ever again in the future while I'm shotgunning, that basically means my primary is terrible right now already. I'm just going to rely on some shotgun kills for a little bit. But I just don't like having inconsistency, like I said in my last video, covering Second Wind or any sort of ability that gives you increased movement speed or, anything like that. And you'll see later that I do prefer Surge, and that's a little bit different. I run minimum strength, and I'm not really getting many Surge activations, and the thing that I don't like is having that movement ability or that movement boost or ADS boost like constantly. And the thing about Surge is if you got a melee off, if you have the chance to survive from that melee engagement, chances are it's going to be, a 2v1 or you're going to be ahead in the gunfight, and you're basically just looking for a team wipe at that point, and being able to whip out your last word quicker than you normally would and take down that last guy is kind of what I look for with Surge. But it's a little bit different, but that's kind of why I don't like running Pulse Wave. I noticed that whenever I run it, my last word shot is decent, and it's not bad while I have Pulse Wave active. It's like if I get too used to it being active, my normal last word shot, just like without any perks or any sort of boost, it becomes extremely bad and extremely inconsistent. My overall summary for Stormcaller is it's probably the best class for the best super in the game, and that if you can get really good with the super, you're probably going to pick up 3, 4, 5 kills, probably around averaging in that 3, 4, 5 kill range pretty much every single game. The nades overall are weak. Some people like Storm, some people like Arc Bolts. I noticed that overall for snipers, people tend to run Arc Bolts over Storm, but that's just from personal experience. The movement ability is the same, so that doesn't really come into play. The melee is very ridiculous. The range is extremely far, but the damage isn't quite the same as Voidwalker. Voidwalker does 130, 135, I believe, and the normal kind of melee for Stormcaller is just the standard 122 damage. And you'll notice that if you have Voidwalker melee and you get a hipfire headshot or any sort of headshot with the last word, it's going to do 75 damage, and then at that point you can finish them off with a melee. But unfortunately for the Stormcaller, even if you get that first headshot, a melee is not going to kill them. So the melee does have extreme range, but when it comes down to it, it doesn't have quite as much damage. Moving on to Void, what I'm currently running right now and what I've been running for the last 3, 4, 5 months is I run Axion Bolts with Focus Burst, as well as Vortex for my super ability, Surge for my melee ability. I also run Annihilate to make sure my Nova Bombs are as big as they can be, so the explosion is a lot larger with that. And then finally, I run Vortex Mastery over Embrace the Void. And Embrace the Void is what a lot of people use right now, and so far from what I've felt in kind of my time playing with it, is that I noticed that as a blanket statement and an overall statement, I just do a lot worse with it. And essentially what it does is any sort of Axion Bolt or super or melee kill, you start regenerating health off of it. But for me, I don't know, the Axions are a huge part of my playstyle, in that if you're playing defensive and you can get a good Axion out at the beginning of pretty much every single engagement because of how fast you regen them, it's pretty hard to lose a gunfight because you always have those things chasing after them. And even if like the Axion Bolt itself doesn't hit the person, they have to move from whatever cover they're around. Maybe they get, or maybe you get like 2 last word shots on them or 1 headshot, and they're hiding behind some box and you can't get them to move. You don't even really need to aim it, you just throw it in the general direction and it starts tracking them. And like I said earlier, it's not going to touch them or tag them with damage a lot of the time. It's just the nade that basically gets people to move out of their hiding spot. As I mentioned earlier, the melee is really good for if you have anyone who's weak, or like I said earlier, if you get a headshot with a last word, you can one-shot them with it. But the unfortunate part is that there's this weird little thing where the recovery period is a lot longer than a standard melee, and that's why I personally run minimum strength, so I don't get my melee pretty much ever. Right now, I'm currently running tier 0 strength, even though I have the capabilities to be running tier 1. I just don't like the melee being up all that often, and I still like it better than Storm, I'd say, for sniping, because it makes you play a little bit smarter, because you don't just run up there and then, dip out of your last word fights to try to get a melee off. But if you get a headshot with a last word, you can finish them off with a melee, or if you get, maybe your teammates get, let's just say 70 damage of shotgun pellets worth on the person, then you can finish them off. It's just that tiny bit of extra damage I felt. There's a lot of times where I look on, the person that I'm approaching and I see their health bar, and I don't think that I'm going to kill them with my melee, and then in the Voidwalker melee, it just comes through and finishes them off. So it depends if you're okay with it. You're also going to notice a lot of the times that the melee just straight out doesn't register. It has this weird thing where if there's pretty much anyone either below you or above you, it'll lock onto them sometimes. The lock on is weak already, and when it does lock onto those people, around 50% of the time, it doesn't actually do any damage, which is frustrating, and that's one of the main reasons that I actually started leveling Stormcaller in the first place. I think overall that the nade and melee is a lot better on Voidwalker. You just have a lot more flexibility. If you're like hidden behind a box or something and you know that someone's pushing you, you can just throw an Axion straight at the ground. It'll track them behind the box, and then if you get a melee or a few last word shots, like 2 to the body or something, and if it hits them, then they will end up dying. And I don't know, I just find that I do really well with Axion. Storm just doesn't really have as strong of a nade setup. It would have been great if arc bolts were never nerfed into the ground, but unfortunately for Storm, they were. The super is a lot better on Storm, so if you're a really good Storm player and you know how to get a ton of super kills with it, even in 3v3, and you can guarantee 2-3 kills every single time, then it might be worth it for you to run Storm. But if you're good on Voidwalker already, you're not missing out on anything so far, and from what I've experienced, Void is overall kind of the best for me, at least me personally, for that passive playstyle where you're baiting people, throwing a lot of nades, shutdown supers where you can make big plays with it. If you get like a last word kill, you can slide around a corner. Any sort of engagement you're behind in, you can just kind of panic Nova Bomb your way out of it. I hope you guys enjoyed the video. I'm gonna have some more videos soon. Hope you enjoyed the last 2 on the 2 hand cannons I got. I was actually using Inspire's account during that video. He's a clanmate of mine and makes some really good videos. If you just want some high tier PvP gameplay, head over to his channel. I have a link to it in the description box down below, as well. It's in my featured channels section on my channel. But I hope you guys enjoyed it, and I hope to see you guys in my next video. Peace.